We continue in our gospel reading through John, and he's building up, as we said yesterday, to this bread of life discourse. Jesus telling us, showing us how the basic lesson here is showing them, they're saying, look, God, we were sustained from the manna in the desert for 40 years. How are you going to sustain us? What are you going to do? Can you top Moses? If you're really the prophet like Moses, can you top Moses? And he says, look, Moses didn't do that for you. My Father did it for you. He's going to do it for you again, but on another level now. He's going to give you the true bread that comes down from heaven. And he just tells them plainly, I am this bread of life. I am this bread of life. So it's just so, this is the whole purpose of Jesus, to be the bread of eternal life that we consume. We have Jesus, the bread of life, born in Bethlehem, which is called the house of bread, right? So the bread of life born in the house of bread, placed in a manger, which is a feeding trough for animals. All this just shows his whole purpose is to be consumed. His life is to be consumed so that we have more life. And it's the basic lesson that Jesus' life sustains us. Ultimately, we know through the Eucharist. So what do we do now when most of us have no Eucharist? So we do the spiritual communions. Most of us are doing spiritual communions. But maybe we can just step back and see, basically what's happening is, we're having to, the church at large is having to fast, do a spiritual fast from the bread of life. And what happens when we fast? We go through Lent, and we learn that we can fast in different ways. And we know that when we do a basic fast of the body, it really begins to tune us into the spiritual realm. And it opens the eyes of our heart, the ears of our heart, and tunes us into God more clearly. The body, in some sense, the body gets hungry and says, look, you better hurry up and focus on God because I want to eat again. Well, if we do a spiritual fast, the same thing, even on a deeper level, should be happening then to us. Tuning us in more clearly to God's will, to God's purposes, to God's plan on the earth, opening the spiritual eyes of our hearts, opening the spiritual ears of our hearts to hear his voice, to see and recognize what he's doing in the world. This spiritual fast should be tuning us in. But part of that happens only if we are depending on him. Fasting causes us to depend on God for life, for sustenance. Physical fasting, but all the more spiritual fasting. So how are we depending on God during this time? How are we tuning in more clearly to God during this time? How are we leaning on him and turning to him for sustenance? Or how are we not? How have we been using the time to enter more deeply into prayer, maybe reading of the scriptures, worshiping online or as best we can in different ways, and doing spiritual communions? How have we been doing all that we can do to be sustained by God's life, by the life of Jesus? Or how have we not? How have we not?